The Galactic Council's meeting chamber was always filled with the echoes of countless species, hisses, trills, low grumbles, and chittering murmurs. It was a cacophony of alien sounds, each representative advocating for their species' interests. Yet today, there was an unnatural hush that had settled over the assembly. High Chancellor Threx of the Vornak, a towering creature with a carapace the colour of dried blood, looked out over the assembly, his compound eyes reflecting the dim light. The council chamber was never this silent, not even when the Vora conflict nearly shattered the peace treaties that held the galaxy together. "Is it true?" Ambassador Glint from the Lithari delegation finally hissed, breaking the silence. The Lithari were known for their penchant for gossip, but this was different. Their usually vibrant feathers had dulled with anxiety. Threx's mandibles clicked. "It is," he confirmed, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "The humans have made their move." A wave of uneasy murmurs rippled through the chamber. For centuries, the humans had been an enigma. When they first appeared on the galactic stage, they were dismissed as just another primitive species clawing their way to the stars. But the stories that filtered in over the decades, about their unpredictability, their stubborn resilience, and above all, their frightening capacity for violence, had turned them into a subject of quiet dread. A diminutive representative of the Zeltrak, a species known for their meticulous record-keeping, rose on its many legs. "Surely, they do not have the technological capacity to challenge our fleets," it said, its voice a soft chitter. "Their technology is centuries behind the most advanced races." "But they don't fight like we do," interjected the Ogron delegate, a massive creature with leathery skin and a voice like grinding stone. "We've all seen the reports. They don't fight for dominance, territory, or resources alone. They fight as if every engagement is personal." "Because for them it is." This voice came from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. The speaker stepped forward, a Sathu, cloaked in shadows, her eyes glowing softly. "Humans fight like cornered beasts. Even when they are on the offensive, they don't know how to surrender." The chamber fell into another heavy silence. It was true. Humans had no natural weapons like the razor-sharp claws of the Drexel or the energy-manipulating appendages of the Zalmara. They had no psychic abilities like the Vidrak or the ability to camouflage like the subtle Drythan, but what they lacked in biological advantages, they made up for with a singular, terrifying quality. They were relentless. The first to fall had been the Karok Dominion, a minor power that controlled a series of star systems in the Orion Spur. No one had anticipated that humans would take offense to a mere border skirmish. After all, the Karok had been merely testing their defenses, an act so common that it was practically tradition in the outer territories. But the humans had responded with force, sending ships laden with weapons beyond what was expected for a species so new to the galactic stage. "They wiped out the Karok's entire fleet," whispered Ambassador Glint, still incredulous. "No survivors." "And they didn't stop there," added the Sathu delegate, her voice low. "They pursued the remnants of the Karok across 5 systems, tracking them down like prey." Threx's mandibles clicked again, a sign of agitation. "We do not understand them," he admitted, which was an unsettling thing for a High Chancellor to say in such a prestigious gathering. "They are unpredictable, illogical. But that is what makes them dangerous." This came from the Lithari ambassador. "They do not adhere to the rules of engagement we are accustomed to. They do not see warfare as a means of asserting dominance, but as a form of survival." There was a shuffling as the representative of the Vidrak, a tall, willowy figure with skin that shimmered like starlight, stood up. Its voice was soft, but it carried across the chamber with eerie clarity. "They have no code of honor, no rules of engagement that bind them. They use every trick, every strategy, every tactic available, no matter how dishonorable we might deem it." "They have a word for it," interjected a Zelmara diplomat, her energy-manipulating tendrils swirling in agitation. They call it total war. To them, there is no distinction between soldier and civilian, no line they will not cross if it means victory. The delegates shuddered. In a galaxy where wars were fought with carefully drawn lines and codes of conduct, where honor dictated the limits of battle, humans were like a plague, ignoring all those unspoken rules. High Chancellor Threx raised a clawed hand to silence the assembly. "We must decide how to respond," he said. "The humans have made it clear that they will not tolerate encroachment into their territories, no matter how slight." "They are sending a message," hissed the Lithari ambassador. "One we would do well to heed." Threx nodded slowly. "If they are willing to go to such lengths over border skirmishes, what would they do if one of the core worlds was threatened?" The room fell silent again, each representative lost in their own grim contemplation. The humans had shown a capacity for ruthlessness that was beyond anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't just that they fought to win, it was that they fought to end conflicts in the most final way possible. "We should reach out to them," suggested the Vidrak delegate cautiously. "Perhaps a treaty, an alliance even. If we cannot defeat them, we may as well bring them into the fold." "And if they refuse?" came the gravelly voice of the Ugron ambassador. "What then?" The High Chancellor's mandibles clicked once more. "Then we prepare for war," he said grimly. "But make no mistake, it will not be like any war we have fought before." There was a heavy pause, and then the Sathu delegate spoke up again, her voice tinged with something that might have been respect or fear. "No one has ever dared to mess with the humans," she murmured. "Perhaps now we understand why." Outside the council chamber, the stars burned coldly, indifferent to the fears and calculations of the beings gathered within. And somewhere, at the edge of the galaxy, humanity watched and waited, ready for the next move. The Galactic Council's deliberations were far from over, but the representatives knew better than to leave their homeworlds undefended in times of uncertainty. As the session adjourned, fleets began mobilizing, and communication channels across light years crackled with the urgent transmission of new orders. Every empire, no matter how powerful, was wary of what humanity might do next. The Vornak High Chancellor Threx, still brooding over the reports, turned to his most trusted advisor, the strategist Velsa. Velsa, smaller than most of her species, but with a mind as sharp as a laser scalpel, had been instrumental in Vornak's past victories. But this new threat made even her hardened mandibles quiver. "What do we know of their tactics?" Threx demanded as he skittered toward the war chamber, its walls lined with holographic displays of star systems and fleet positions. Velsa's multifaceted eyes glimmered in the dim light. "Their engagements are unpredictable. They rely on strategies we would consider reckless, even suicidal. But they are adaptive. Every encounter shows them learning, evolving. It's as if they thrive on chaos." Threx clicked his claws together thoughtfully. "Chaos, yes, but how do we leverage it?" "Perhaps," Velsa suggested, "we do not fight them directly. We use their very nature against them. If they are as territorial and aggressive as the reports suggest, perhaps we can force them into overextending themselves." Threx paused, considering the idea. "Bait them into conflict, make them overcommit, and then strike." He turned his gaze to a holographic display of the human territories, glowing a dull red on the galactic map. "Yes, perhaps that will work." Meanwhile, on the human frontier world of Draconis III, Colonel Avery Ramirez stood on a windswept ridge, her gaze sweeping over the vast expanse of the planet's surface. The humans had colonized Draconis III only a few years ago, turning its harsh environment into a thriving outpost. Now, it was one of their forward bases, an essential line of defense against the encroaching alien powers. Her comm unit crackled, and a voice came through, gruff and urgent. "Colonel, another probe just pinged our outer perimeter. Looks like Vornak scouts again." Ramirez's jaw tightened. Acknowledged. Any sign they're preparing for a direct assault? Negative, ma'am. Just more probing runs. Keep an eye on them, she ordered. They're testing our defenses, looking for a weakness. We can't let them get comfortable. She turned away from the ridge, marching back toward the command center. The humans had learned early on that in this galaxy, weakness was an invitation for conquest. They had been attacked, betrayed, and disregarded too many times to leave anything to chance now. Inside the command center, a holographic map of the sector was spread out before her. Bright red dots indicated known Vornak positions, each one creeping closer. The Vornak were methodical, calculating, their attacks like the slow closing of a vice. But Ramirez knew something the aliens didn't. Humans were not prey. They were hunters. Colonel, we've intercepted a communication burst, reported Lieutenant Chen, the tech specialist, without looking up from his console. It's encrypted, but it's coming from deep in Vornak space. Looks like they're massing their forces. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. They're planning something big. She could almost see the gears turning in the minds of the alien commanders. The Vornak were trying to intimidate them, to force them into submission, but humans didn't submit. She opened a secure channel to Fleet Command. This is Colonel Ramirez on Draconis 3. We're seeing increased Vornak activity on the border, requesting permission to initiate preemptive strikes. There was a brief silence, then a voice came through. Permission granted, Colonel. Do what you need to keep the frontier secure. A faint smile touched Ramirez's lips. Understood. We'll give them a proper welcome. Back in Vornak space, High Chancellor Threx received a series of urgent messages. The humans, rather than pulling back in the face of the Vornak's probes, had launched a series of surgical strikes against their scouting parties. Reports of ambushed patrols, obliterated outposts, and destroyed supply lines flooded in. The humans were no longer content to sit behind their borders. They were taking the fight to the Vornak. They're retaliating faster than anticipated, Velsa reported, her voice tinged with concern. Our scouts have been unable to establish a clear perimeter. Threx's mandibles clicked with frustration. How can they be so effective with such limited resources? Their fleet is a fraction of ours. It's not about numbers, Velsa said quietly. It's about precision. They strike where it hurts most and disappear before we can react. It's as if they can anticipate our moves. Threx's eyes narrowed. They have no psychics, no telepaths. How are they doing this? Velsa hesitated. We believe it's their intelligence networks. They rely heavily on machines and data analysis. It's almost like they can predict the flow of battle. Threx growled deep in his throat. Then we must turn this into a war of attrition, starve them of resources, cut off their supply lines. We will force them into open conflict where their cunning cannot save them. Colonel Ramirez stood before her gathered troops, her voice steady and calm as she addressed them. The Vornak think they can crush us by sheer force, but they've forgotten one thing. We don't play by their rules. The soldiers, battle-hardened men and women from dozens of colonies, responded with grim smiles. The Vornak might have superior numbers and technology, but humans had something far more potent, a willingness to do whatever it took to survive. Our scouts have identified a key Vornak supply depot, she continued, the holographic map highlighting a distant system. We're going to hit them where it hurts. If they want to force us into a war of attrition, let's see how they like it when they're the ones starving. As the soldiers prepared to embark on their mission, Ramirez couldn't help but feel a surge of grim satisfaction. The aliens might have the advantage in numbers, but they didn't understand humanity's greatest strength. When pushed, humans pushed back harder. The first strikes were just the beginning. Soon, the Vornak would realize the truth that every species in the galaxy had come to learn. Messing with humanity was a mistake. Across the cold reaches of space, as Vornak warships began to mobilize in greater numbers, the humans moved like shadows, striking and vanishing before the Vornak fleets could even react. The galaxy watched with bated breath, and rumors began to spread among the other species. The humans were not merely fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. The Vornak High Fleet, a juggernaut of warships, drifted silently through the void of space. Over 100 ships, each bristling with enough firepower to devastate entire planets, had been gathered to crush the human resistance. Threx watched from the bridge of his command ship, the Indomitable, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars. "They will not escape this time," he declared, his voice carrying across the command deck. "We have them pinned against the border of their own territory. They have no reinforcements, no escape routes. This will be the end of their defiance." Velsa, his trusted strategist, was less certain. "They are cornered, yes, but that's when humans are most dangerous. Every conflict we've had with them follows the same pattern. They act irrationally when it seems they are about to lose." Threx's mandibles clicked in irritation. "There is no irrationality that can overcome our superior firepower. Once we break their fleet, we will drive straight to their colony worlds and crush their resistance once and for all." But Velsa couldn't shake her unease. The humans had shown time and again that they didn't fight like any other species. They turned desperation into strength, chaos into strategy. She scanned the tactical displays, searching for the hidden trap she was certain the humans had laid. But there was nothing, just a cluster of human ships massed around the colony world of Delta 5. "Are they really going to defend that colony to the last ship?" Velsa murmured to herself. "What are they planning?" On Delta 5, the skies were a tapestry of streaking lights and explosions as the first wave of Vornak ships engaged the human defenders. Colonel Ramirez stood in the command bunker, watching the battle unfold through a series of flickering holoscreens. The ground shook intermittently as orbital bombardments pounded the outer perimeter, but Ramirez's expression was one of steely determination. "Status report," she barked. Lieutenant Chen, hunched over his console, didn't look up. "The Vornak fleet has begun deploying landing craft, but they're still focusing most of their firepower on our orbital defenses. We've got 2 squadrons holding them at bay, but we're running low on munitions." "Perfect," Ramirez muttered under her breath. "Let them think we're desperate." She turned to Captain Singh, her second in command. "Are the preparations complete?" Singh nodded. "The charges are set and our decoys are in position. The Vornak won't know what hit them." "Good. All units, initiate Phase 1. Let's see how the bugs like getting swarmed." Out in the cold of space, the Vornak were slowly pushing the humans back. Their fleet was vastly larger and better armed, but they were confused by the erratic human maneuvers. The human ships darted in and out of the asteroid belt surrounding Delta 5, striking the Vornak's exposed flanks before retreating back into the dense field. Threx watched the unfolding battle with growing frustration. "They're delaying the inevitable," he growled. "Order our bombers to flush them out. I want that asteroid belt cleared." Velsa's eyes widened. "Wait, Chancellor, that's—" But her warning came too late. The moment the Vornak bombers entered the asteroid belt, they triggered a series of concealed mines. Explosions tore through the Vornak formation, ripping apart several ships in a chain reaction. "They've mined the entire field!" Velsa shouted over the alarms blaring through the command deck. "This was a trap!" Threx's mandibles ground together in rage as he watched several more Vornak ships disintegrate. "Pull them back! Regroup!" But before he could issue new orders, a priority alert flashed on his display. "Sir, incoming signals, multiple hyperspace signatures," the tactical officer reported. "We're being surrounded!" Out of the darkness, dozens of human warships dropped out of hyperspace, emerging from hidden positions behind the gas giant orbiting Delta 5. It was a classic human feint, luring the Vornak into overcommitting to a single front before striking where they were weakest. Threx could hardly believe it. How did they assemble a fleet of this size? We accounted for all their known ships. Velsa's mandibles quivered with something that resembled admiration. "The humans," she said, her voice a whisper, "must have been holding back their forces. waiting for the perfect moment. Ramirez's voice crackled over an open communication line, broadcast directly to the Vornak flagship. "This is Colonel Ramirez of the Terran Defense Force. You're in our space and you're not leaving. All units, engage!"
The human fleet surged forward, smaller and less heavily armed than the Vornak ships, but far more agile. Human fighters swarmed the larger vessels like angry hornets, targeting engines, sensor arrays, and exposed weapon systems. The Vornak were unprepared for such ferocity. The humans fought like cornered animals, willing to sacrifice everything to secure even the smallest advantage. On the Indomitable, chaos reigned. Threx's command staff were shouting over one another, trying to make sense of the tactical situation. The humans had not just countered their assault, they had turned it into a rout. "Pull back!" Threx ordered, his voice a desperate snarl. "We must regroup." But the humans were not giving them any quarter. Ramirez's forces pressed their advantage, hammering the Vornak ships as they tried to retreat. The Vornak's famed discipline began to unravel as panic set in. Their formations broke apart, each ship trying to escape the relentless human assault. "They're routing us," Velsa said, shock evident in her voice. "How is this possible?" Threx stared at the battle in disbelief. This wasn't how wars were fought, at least not by the rules that had governed galactic conflict for millennia. But humans didn't play by those rules. They never had. Hours later, the battlefield was a graveyard of shattered Vornak ships, their once proud fleet reduced to smouldering wreckage. Colonel Ramirez stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the debris field. The cost had been high, but they had won. "Casualty reports?" she asked, her voice flat with exhaustion. "Heavy," Lieutenant Chen replied. "We lost a third of our ships, but we inflicted nearly total losses on the Vornak. They won't be able to mount another offensive for years." Ramirez nodded. "Good. Send a message to Fleet Command. Delta 5 is secure. The Vornak won't be bothering us again anytime soon." She turned to look at the flickering hologram of the galaxy map. The humans had just proven that they were more than capable of holding their own against one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. But she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was watching, and soon the other empires would have to decide. Would they risk open conflict with humanity, or would they finally understand the lesson the Vornak had learned too late? No one dared mess with the humans. And now, the galaxy knew why. The battered remnants of the Vornak fleet limped back toward their home systems, their defeat a stain on what had once been their unchallenged dominance. High Chancellor Threx stood in the dimly lit command center, watching the holographic projections of the retreat. The silence was suffocating, his once loyal officers avoiding his gaze. Velsa, his chief strategist, approached cautiously. "The humans, they've issued a broadcast," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and resignation. "Play it," Threx ordered, his voice hollow. The message flickered to life, projecting the image of Colonel Ramirez. Her eyes were cold and unforgiving, her presence demanding attention even across the light years that separated her from the Vornak High Command. "This is Colonel Avery Ramirez of the Terran Defense Force. Let this be your final warning. Encroach on our territory again, and we won't just stop at defending ourselves. We will come for you. Your fleets, your worlds, your people. We will make sure that the Vornak understand that humanity will not be threatened. We do not start wars, but we will finish them." The broadcast cut off, leaving the command center in heavy silence. For the Vornak, it was a humiliation beyond words. Their empire, feared for centuries, had been humbled by a species they had once dismissed as primitive. Threx's mandibles quivered with rage, but Velsa saw something else in his dark eyes: fear. "What do we do now, High Chancellor?" she asked quietly. For the first time in his long career, Threx did not have an answer. "We retreat," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Pull our forces back, consolidate our defenses. We can't afford another defeat like this." Velsa's eyes widened. You mean you're conceding to the humans? Threx's claws trembled with barely suppressed fury. We have no choice. They've proven that they will not fight by the rules we understand. Until we learn how to counter their tactics, until we can understand what drives them, we must bide our time. Velsa nodded, though inwardly she wondered if the Vornak would ever truly understand humanity. What drove them was not the pursuit of conquest or glory. It was something far more primal. Humans fought not for dominance, but for the right to exist on their own terms. Far away, on the human frontier world of Delta Fulv, Colonel Ramirez stood in the war room, watching as the last of the Vornak ships blinked out of the system on her tactical display. The battle was over, and humanity had won this round. But she knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Vornak, and perhaps even other empires, would return. The galaxy was full of powers that had only ever respected strength. Captain Singh approached, her eyes filled with exhaustion, but also pride. The Vornak are pulling back. We did it, ma'am. Ramirez allowed herself a small, grim smile. For now, Captain. But we've only delayed the inevitable. Word will spread. The others will come, thinking they can succeed where the Vornak failed. Let them come, Singh said fiercely. We'll be ready. Ramirez turned to look out through the viewport, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. We don't just need to be ready, Singh. We need to be smarter, faster. The Vornak will lick their wounds and the others will watch. They won't underestimate us next time. There was a pause, the air heavy with the weight of what they had accomplished and what was still to come. What's our next move? Singh asked. Ramirez's eyes narrowed, her mind already running through possibilities. We fortify our borders, strengthen our alliances with the other fringe species that distrust the core empires as much as we do, and we need to invest in technology to close the gap. We may have outsmarted them this time, but they won't let us get away with the same trick twice. She turned to the assembled officers, who were battered but resolute. Remember this day. The galaxy will not take our victory lightly, but they will also know that humanity is not to be trifled with. We may not be the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced, but we are relentless. We don't stop, we don't surrender. The officers saluted, their faces grim but proud. The human spirit, that indomitable will to fight on even in the face of impossible odds, had carried them through another battle. But the war was far from over. Months later, the galaxy was abuzz with the aftershocks of the conflict on Delta Fulv. Stories spread like wildfire across the stars, whispered in dark corners of spaceports and aboard interstellar freighters. Empires that had once watched humanity with detached curiosity now viewed them with a mix of respect and fear. In a shadowy corner of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened once more. The delegates from the most powerful empires, the Lithari, the Ogron, the Vidrak, had gathered to discuss the human problem.